rather be storm drains than swim in that water in the storm drain.
Okay, we're
Yeah.
live.
Funny, it looked like there was a
Welcome
line
to
break or
our
something that was shooting
city
at us.
council work meeting tonight. We're gonna stall for a minute, give Ted a few minutes. We'll see where we go. So we'll just get going here. Start with item 1.1, review of this evening's agenda.
I'm sure I got a couple of things. Under the consent agenda, item number 10.2 is something that we kind of have standing in the consent agenda as the acknowledgement of the city status report. I would like to propose that we move that permanently to become like an item 2.1 maybe. So that it doesn't have to take very long, it doesn't have to be a big deal. But I think there should be an ongoing discussion about things, factors that may be leading to numbers changing. Some evaluation and feedback of maybe what we'd like to see. How that, I mean, we don't necessarily need to do it tonight, but just on a go forward, just leave it as a point, so instead of just being buried in the consent agenda, it's something that actually comes forward as a potential discussion topic, yeah.
I like that.
And then,
Do you wanna do that tonight?
we don't have to do it
You
tonight,
can discuss
it's,
it tonight.
no, we don't have to do it tonight, we
Okay.
can just do it at a, just on a going forward basis,
We'll
I'd
just
like
start
to
putting
take
it
that, put it in
in
as
the
a,
work meeting.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no need to belabor it tonight. And then, I would propose that we continue items number 2.3 and items number 11.3 to a future meeting, as those staff reports do not contain a recommendation from staff on an action. When we have a report from our experts and it doesn't have a specific recommendation like that, I just think we need to postpone it until they're ready to make a recommendation to us.
I mean, and if it's something.
Are you
discuss
talking
and close,
I
yeah,
don't
10.3 hasn't,
No,
has a recommendation?
11.3.
Oh, okay.
Item 2.3 and item 11.3. Neither one of those contain a recommendation, and we've made comments about this in the past before that we need those staff reports to contain a recommendation for action, and neither one of those have that, and so I just want to continue until they do have such a recommendation, so.
So 11.3 does, staff concurs with the recommendation of the planning commission, is how it's written. It's the last sentence in there.
Yeah, but it's not under the recommendation sections at the top, and I.
It is, it's, if you read it, it talks all about the planning commission, it's the very
Oh, so I
last
just
sentence in that
closed
top
mine.
paragraph.
I literally had it and I just closed it, so give me one
I
second.
know, cause we talked about this as staff, making sure they're in there, I missed the other one, sorry. And you're welcome to continue, but I did point out.
So I'll pull this up here, I wanna make sure.
we also talked about doing like regular performance reviews on those ahead of these recommendations.
For the planning commission.
I remember that.
Yeah, so
My
10
apologies, it does have that last sentence.
So I did not catch the other one.
So, my apologies, I can withdraw that motion on 11.3, and just continue item 2.3 then.
I would suggest just make that motion and we will discuss. Yeah, not saying that, I'm not saying.
It's actually a work
2.3.
meeting item.
Oh,
Yeah.
2.3 is a work meeting, okay, thank you, sorry. 11.3, which we're not, now we're just.
Yeah, 11.3 is not there.
Okay, let's talk about that one later, because like Joe said, there was some discussion about maybe some, like a quick.
I have another question if you
Mhm.
have.
I think, are you good?
Yeah, that's it, I-
10.3 is the funding thing for the DACA. I have a resident that wants to know, this is just the funding obligations, but she was wanting to know if we had any idea when the construction of the road will begin.
So I met with UDOT yesterday, and they have the funding and the approval to build the extension of 126 to U111 and U111 up to the whole thing, wherever it ties into north of Fletcher and Story. And they're going out to bid in November. As we know, bids are a little squirrely, so if it comes in under or at 90 million, they'll have the money to do it. If it comes in above that number, they will have to value engineer something to make it happen. So anticipation is they would start construction next spring, and then it's probably at least a 12-month build. It's a greenfield project, so it should be fast. With that, there would be a signal at 118th, at 126th, and at the north end, if we put in those three signals in.
And so, but that only ends at 126, so we don't know 126 to 131st.
126 to 131st is our 7300 West project. We have the funding for it. We're waiting for plans to get finalized to engineer review. And that's us, and we'll be doing that project.
Okay.
And so my anticipation is we'll start that project next spring, but we'll do that faster than we got over theirs.
So all of them probably are gonna start next spring.
Olympia
Yes,
Boulevard
all goes
will
well.
is another piece up there. That's gonna be paid 6 weeks in total. So
Sorry,
it's all kind of coming together.
alright,
We haven't brought the interlocal agreement for 7300 West yet to the council. It's a reimbursement project with the state pass-through funding that we received. When those plans are finalized, we'll put that agreement's ready, and then we'll bring it to council for approval. We'll know more about the scheduling.
alright, thank you. I guess we could have pulled it off the consent and have it
Hey, that's my move.
My apologies, I wouldn't say no to that, I was just making it, we probably need to make it, but since we don't, since it's in this.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, give it.
So on my item 11.5, regarding special event permits. So in the staff report, it talks about events held on private property versus public property, and whether it's a public or private event. That portion of the staff report at the time was consistent with the text amendment that we drafted. But after the fact, in talking with Nathan, we revised how that looks. I'll go over that in my presentation, but I wanted to give you a heads up that the staff report is not consistent with it. The actual text amendment is the same, is correct, but the staff report, I didn't have time to switch it up.
Okay, over 1.2, future agenda items.
I have one question on, planning commission heard, an amendment from Ivory Homes for the removal of senior housing. I assume it's probably on the dance project?
Yes, in Oaks.
When will we be hearing that?
Potentially at our next meeting, I needed to have a follow-up conversation with him.
It is an MBA amendment, their request.
Right,
It would be a work meeting discussion is what we've been anticipating.
I just, this resident wants to make sure she's part of that, I just wanted to know if we have anything, you think next meeting or the next, within the next two meetings?
I had a conversation with Ivory today, I needed to talk with you about Nathan. I was assuming it would be on our very next meeting,
Which would be 9/11, or no, 8/28.
yeah, but I wanted to check with you.
Did that resident participate in public comment period for
Yeah.
the planning commission?
She did.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Baseball.
Oh. So, I think that you guys went through it before I was on council, I don't think I was on council at the time. We had the baseball approach, a couple of us staff and myself about, they looked at comparable fees. They feel like we're a little bit higher at the baseball because they do the maintenance versus some of the others, so they just would like us to look at.
They use some,
What's that?
they use some.
Who did Silver?
Right. So they just want us to look at it, so we just committed it. We're going to just look at the baseball, baseball again,
Contracted fees.
so.
I'll just preemptively say, no matter what it is, we gotta cover costs.
100%. Yep. And it could go up, yep. So.
Okay.
Maybe just look at baseball, or I guess we need a second. Anybody?
Oh, we've talked about that with basic park field rentals, the building, et cetera. My point is just consistency, when I say no matter what it is, across the board, that's all we're trying to do is cover costs.
Agreed.
Should we just look at baseball right now then, since they're the ones that were,
It's up to you all. We can run an analysis on all of them.
is that gonna be a lot of staff time right now though?
Yeah.
I mean, it'll take a while to get to that.
I'd say that it's important for us to, if we're gonna make a change to one, to look at all of those rental fees and make sure that they're consistently
Okay.
adjusted to cover what the costs are.
So my only thing is, it's not gonna come back to the next meeting.
No.
It'll be.
Oh, and I mean, I think he knows
Well,
that,
and
they just
maybe
started their
it's-
fall season, I mean,
Maybe it just needs to be part of the general, so just like this, we're updating the fee schedule, right? It just needs to be on a scheduled project at some point in the future to do.
We're currently looking at room rentals in this building, and so we can just add it after that and start looking at those costs.
perfect.
Thank goodness we have Trevor. Our brilliant Trevor.
Was that it?
I thought Teddy had one. Is he on?
He had asked for the, it's item 2.4.
So it's
Okay.
on here tonight, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I think he'd also asked for the update on the broadband. He sent out an
He
email
did.
on that.
You're right. But I don't think anybody seconded him. But we're happy to provide that update.
I can give you a quick
I've been
update
a
on
little
it.
MIA, honestly.
Yeah, we can put it on
We had put it on for another meeting.
the next work meeting or
Yeah,
something like
next
that.
work
It
meeting,
wouldn't,
we
it
can do
wouldn't,
an
not much
update.
to update, you know.
Yeah,
I'll have some good information by then.
there we go.
By tomorrow morning, and everything's good.
That's right.
Okay. 1.3, council discussion of future citizen recognitions, nothing rather than policy on tonight. Anything else tonight? We do have tonight, we are doing our courts tonight, we're recognizing our court for some recognition they received lately, so our judge will be here, Judge Gardner will be here.
And our grand marshal.
Yeah, medalist recognitions we need to add on, picture here.
Oh, yeah, the one kid from Harriman on the rec sevens.
She's already gone.
Spiff, yeah, she's back in San Diego. I will say that one of our
She's here on
partners,
Saturday,
one of our partners has reached out and donated $5,000, wants us to figure out a way to recognize her as a city, whether it be a scholarship, or whether it be supporting, I think she would like to see it go to youth rugby. But we're gonna wait until she can get back, so there'll be some coordination with the Warriors, where she can get back and we'll coordinate something. But- So yeah, there will be a future.
Cool.
She was here, had a great turnout Saturday, a lot of youth out, so that'll grow the women's rugby game out here. Midway, so it'll be good. Okay, we'll move on to 2.1, Wasatch Front Regional Council Fresh Look Transit Studies. Ted, are you gonna run point?
Yes.
If you wanna come up here, Councilman Hodges is gone tonight, you can come here, or you can stand, whatever you're more comfortable with.
I would love to sit at the table if that's acceptable, and I'll just grab a water. Mayor Palmer and council, thanks a lot for having us here tonight. We wanted to come and give you an overview of the Transit Fresh Look project, give you a status update where we're at in it, and then just listen to your comments and questions. And with me today, so I'm Ted Knowlton, I'm with Wasatch Front Regional Council. With me today, we have Trustee Christensen, Carlton Christensen from UTA, easy for me to say, and Kendall Willardson from Mountain Land Association of Governments. I'm having trouble with my words. And Lauren Victor, who works with me at WFRC. I'd invite them to chime in anytime. And of course, pose questions to any of us. We figured that this area hasn't been studied enough. No, but we know that there's been a lot of public transportation studies in this area. And honestly, I think we were all a little bit sheepish about the idea of coming and working together with you all on one more. But our goal with this effort is to have this be the last time, realistically, in the near-term future, that public transportation is studied. And what will make that happen is if the royal we can come together on a unified agreement about how we proceed. So that's the key idea with this, the Transit Fresh Look, is let's look afresh at our options. Let's think about what we can align to get done, and then let's move forward and get that done. So it's the last study. That's our effort here. Let me walk through a few slides here. I won't go line by line, but one idea is let's convene a partnership of communities and transportation agencies so that we kind of have everybody at the table that we need to in order to align together on our path forward. I'll talk about that partnership in a second. We've been gathering your latest growth and development changes to make sure we have it up to date and that we're giving you the credit for the good work you've been doing with your planning and zoning.
Ted, can I jump in here too? I
Yes,
was talking to
please.
Nathan Monday. I think where we started going back and wondering why some numbers were off years ago, right, when we first started. And somebody made the comment to me, Harriman developed through master development agreements, probably more than most cities have. We don't know that we've updated a lot of our, maybe our general, what were we talking?
Underlying zoning.
Our underlying zoning to match our MBAs. So your organization may look at our zoning maps and see, you know, a 1 acre, but really there's an underlying there's a master development agreement now over that
Yes.
that is a whole different density, for example. So I think that's where we owe it a little bit. So we need to come back to that too at some point and but just so you know, that's something our end too we've thought about, we need to.
We have been drilling down so that we're not just taking it at planning and zoning. And so we're working with Nathan and Wendy and Blake and Michael and your team to make sure we have the numbers that you would have us have.
Okay. Good.
Now, to clarify, the Transit Fresh Look is not looking at the entire gamut of public transportation. It's focusing on regional transit connections. So this is higher capacity things like bus rapid transit, potentially like rail. And not so much on bus or on micro transit, just so you know that the focus of this effort. We're evaluating potential improvements based on partnership goals. So previous efforts have kind of used industry standards about ridership versus cost. Well, we're kind of taking a new look and saying, what really matters to the partnership? Let's evaluate based on that. I'll give you just a sense of that. This is a what would it take approach. So we're coming together as a partnership to say, what do we want to have happen? And then we're identifying what is the gap between what we want to have happen and where we're at. And can we close that gap? I can unpack that with you for a minute if that's helpful. Let's see if we can align together on a common vision, and then let's maintain the partnership towards implementation. It's not finish the project, the study, wrap it up, and say goodbye to each other. This is the start of getting something done. This is what makes the Transit Fresh Look something that I'm proud to be part of and we're excited about. The Transit Fresh Look partnership, it's 2 counties, so it goes into Utah County. That's why we have Kendall here. It involves all of the transportation agencies, including UDOT. We are part of the partnership. This is not us studying it on local government behalf. It's us coming together as a partnership, as a team. And you can see, we have state legislators involved, the counties, school districts, private sectors, etc. These are your representatives on the partnership. You can tweak that. That's your decision. But this is who you've put forward right now to be on that partnership. The technical committee is a key part of just vetting the ideas and solutions together. And you can see Blake, Brody, and Bryce on that. We are building on the Harriman Transit Study. We're not wiping that away. The good work that you did in that is coming in. We're gathering your land use assumptions for that, your corridor ideas. I just want you to be aware of that. Now, I'm kind of moving through this quickly because we want to give you time to talk about what you want to talk about. But the partnership, we have these feedback loops with councils and with the technical committee. We're here tonight to kind of make sure you're sort of up to speed on this. We can come to you in whatever frequency makes sense to you. And so your partnership committee members can noodle on that, and you can, we can kind of do whatever you think would make sense. Now, you understand the nature of this kind of thing where you're developing transit solutions across multiple communities. You have to have a mechanism to coordinate. That's the partnership committee. We can't make decisions in a fragmented way. We have to come together to make decisions, but you can make sure your partnership committee members know what you think through that feedback loop. I hope that makes basic sense. the goals that the partnership has put together, we wanna be connected to the rest of the region. We want people to be able to move. We want them to be able to access jobs and destinations. We wanna help build economic development, and we want to implement this thing. So those are the kind of the key things that the partnership has said they want to do. We're in like the third inning of this project. And we're about to have things that I'm sure are gonna like rub people every which direction. We're not there yet. We're coming to you right before something that would engender a crazy amount of discussion with you. And that's on purpose, because we don't want you to be surprised by what's coming. Building a foundation is gathering land use ideas, making sure we establish goals and criteria that represent the partnership. The developing ideas we're in the early stage of that. We will look at, with the partnership committee, packages of potential transit improvements in about a month, right? And you'll see those too. And you'll share your feedback on those with your partnership committee members. We can come back. But I don't want you to be surprised by what you see there. Those will be rough. And we will refine those over time and towards coming to a vision. So don't take those as, well, it's either package A, B, or C and we gotta pick. It's really kind of learning from those, trying to figure out, how we want to, are there key corridors we wanna go to bat for? Are there key levels of transit improvements we wanna go to bat for? And starting to understand how viable are different ideas. That's kind of what you'll see with these scenarios. In that, we'll seek to understand the transit benefit of your zoning and entitlements. When you have homes and jobs near potential transit, that's where the riders come from. So we want to understand that. That doesn't decide this project, but it's a key input. So land use is an important thing that we need to understand. You can decide if you want to vary any land use, just in conceptually looking ahead, but you don't have to. So that's up to you.
Come back to it, but I'll tell you, we can't, it's already all decided, it's done.
Okay.
It's all done.
So you guys are out of business then as a council, or just kidding?
It's all done, all the NDAs are done, signed, dotted, we're landlocked, like there's no land use decisions to make.
Okay.
We have a few, but the majority of
Yeah.
what's left is already under.
Rezoning applications.
Gotcha. Okay, got it.
But yes, we'd like to be out of business.
I know councils do way more than land use.
Right?
The Rotary Club run.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Lions Club.
I'm rounding the end of this short presentation. So in September, we're gonna look at these initial packages that I mentioned. How do those packages meet the partnership goals? We'll start to identify the package that the partnership prefers, and we'll ask ourselves, what would it take to make that happen? That can include political will, that can include funding avenues, it could include land use. Maybe not for Harriman, maybe for another community. It doesn't have to. It's really each community deciding what they want to do and the partnership together thinking about what do we want to coalesce behind. That's kind of the idea. And we're aiming to wrap up at least the study part of that, not the implementation part, in December, if we can. And it might go into early 2025. That's the overview and the status update. And I hope that was clear, but if you have clarifying questions, we'd love to answer them. But then we'd just like to open it up for any comments or questions that you've got for any of us.
I will say in our discussions we've had in these meetings, it's been very, because before a lot of the discussions were, what's the word? Like financially constrained.
Right.
A lot of things have been, that's not, like the tracks extension was never really considered because it wasn't, there's no funding necessarily for that. But this has been, everything's off, So this is, we're trying to say, similar to what we've seen with the athletic complex, if there's enough community support behind the tracks extension, let's find a way to make it happen, that kind of thing. So it's been funny, I mean, even, it's been interesting to see tracks go, like even now Utah County wants to see tracks go down Mountain View Corridor, for example, down into there. I mean, I had never considered, because we have that imaginary line, right, between us and Utah County where we've always said, you know, pointed it back over to the point, not saying that's right or wrong, I'm just saying it's been interesting to have these multi-county conversations with, you know, gloves are off, let's put everything on there, and it's been, again, all sort of different ideas from every table, every week. Our team hasn't been on the same table ever hardly at all, it's been different ideas, but
Do you wanna add anything that I missed? Any of you, Carlton?
Sure. Let me see if I can stand up here. I think, well, this is kind of regionally focused. You know, we're working on local bus service, and in fact, we're currently working on our 5-year plan, which we update every couple of years. And those conversations, in fact, some of them really were informed a little bit from the early dialogue in, I think, probably that initial meeting. You know, there's some local service that we contemplate in the next year or so, or maybe less, because we're looking at now shifting our major change day to April. And it's a fixed route service, but what has informed that is microtransit use and where people are going and starting from. And frankly, some corridors are creating such demand that it's more efficient and helpful to have a fixed route service to serve those corridors and those destinations. So that conversation's there. It's not as constrained by the regional transportation plan because it doesn't feed in to the regional transportation plan. We always overlay it, but it's not constrained by the regional transportation plan, and we have a little bit more flexibility, and so as the development is taking place and those corridors are developed, that local bus service, which generally will almost always will tie into our regional service at some juncture, you know, whether it's a light rail stop or front runner stop or some way for the rider to transfer elsewhere into the system. So I think we've made some recent revisions. We're gonna come back out to the public. You can take a look at those. You know, the goal would be to look to a December timeframe also for that adoption. So as you think about it in those two contexts.
So I would only share one concern is, in my time on the council, there have been a lot of studies.
Yeah.
A lot of studies, and I
For sure.
hear you say this is the last one, but I've sat in this room 100 times
Heard
with
it
different
before.
developers that will
yeah.
come in and say, this is coming now, whoops, just kidding, this is coming now, whoops, just kidding. I have absolutely no reason to believe you. And I don't mean that personally.
No, I understand.
I just
totally
mean that
get that.
it has been, we're so far behind on transit. Harriman has never been taken seriously by UTA. For the whole time I've been on the council. The only time we started being taken seriously was when Representative Perucci run her bill. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, okay, we're gonna have to be accountable to the money. How much money is this study costing? In comparison to the study before, the study before, the study before. We're wasting a lot of taxpayer money doing a whole bunch of studies and never getting any work done.
That doesn't include everybody else's time.
Exactly, not just in the study, but
Yeah.
our staff time and everything like that. There's been a tremendous amount of money wasted by doing studies and not implementing them and getting something done. So I would
I
just
think you're right.
appreciate it if
Yeah.
actually it happened.
I hear you, and that's why I really want this to be the last one. I think it can be the last one, and we're certainly doing all we can to have it be the last one, and the worst thing in the world would be to have this not be the last one. Not the worst thing in the
Well,
world,
it's, even if it got implemented,
Yeah.
there's always changes as you
Sure.
go along, for
Yes.
sure. But
But to have
nothing
it
ever
be-
happens.
to have it be impactful and actionable, yeah.
with the visions in the air.
But one thing I would just add for, this is also helping to align, I would say, as we've met with different communities, the vision isn't necessarily been similar. I mean, even connecting communities about how a regional system would work within it. So that's a value here. If a project did move forward and it did have federal funding in it, and I wouldn't term it a study, but you do have to still go through an environmental impact process, and there are other components to that. So in full transparency, I would love to say it's all over, but there would be a piece there that would be required if there
It'd be
were
great if we got that
federal
far.
funding. Yeah, no, it would. I mean, it'd be a good problem to have,
That,
wouldn't
that
it?
study is what you, is what you do ahead of
Sure.
actually building something. We've gotten nowhere, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just piggyback on Sherry's comments. I mean, in my time, I personally have gotten very involved in these studies and come to the conclusion that it is a waste of time and busy work, right? So I hope that's not the case. We need to work at it, right? Hopefully, we're getting closer with each one, but those of us that have the experience, yeah, there's a definite level of skepticism that, for me, this is a reaction to Perucci's bill and the legislative pressure to say, okay, every one of these studies I've been involved with, we're gonna do this so you feel like we're doing something. And then nothing ever happens. And is that certain people's fault? No, I don't think so. I think the big disconnect is the money, right? Where is the money? So instead of starting here, our efforts are with the legislators. Perucci's bill is an example of that, to go around the other way. And we need to work from both ends, but where's the money gonna come from? Whether it's federal, state, et cetera. Do we revise how the funding for UTA is done now to shift funds to growing areas? Because if it's not incorporated into these areas and people's habits are so entrenched that the introduction of it will be unsuccessful, right? There's lots of studies that show that. There is a kind of a point of no return where you'll never catch up, it'll never be effective because it wasn't implemented properly along the way. So just a few of my thoughts, but to me, that's the big disconnect, is the money. So hopefully working at it from both ends now, instead of just at the study level, and at our level, it's been busy work, it's been a huge waste of time, and money, we've actually dedicated, I mean, at the city's expense, right of way, that we're just continually flat out, when we did it, yep, do that, and you're gonna get it, it's gonna happen, and then we're told, nope, we're not interested, never gonna see it. So at that to me, this is kind of grassroots level, let's talk about ideas. We've talked about all those. Go dust off those studies, everything's pretty much the same. Land use decisions, the major decisions where the density and road transport, all the road layout, all that stuff is done. There's no rezoning that we can do that's going to materially affect this study. And I'd say the same for everyone except for the 2,000 acres of South Jordan that's going to Rio Tinto. There's something they can do there. Everything else is done, decided. So hopefully this will move the needle a little bit towards that on this end, but we've done so much of this, I hope we're not gonna duplicate. Because every study, I've been involved with 3 and each one has duplicated the one before it. So hopefully we can continue the work on the other end to connect the money and actually get to an implementation phase.
I appreciate your coming. It's certainly nothing personal, it's simply about the process that's been not good.
We've had these discussions.
No, I was just, I first got elected to the city council in '97, and I'm starting to see some of the stuff that we had done finally get implemented. So I'm appreciative of that time constraint, and in our case, our city put in, a couple $100 million to do some of that work, and so it's a big commitment and big decisions, and it's interesting to have watched the land development patterns that have followed that investment. So I'm appreciative though of the frustration, for sure.
If I can just ask one question. When we talk about, transit, it generally feels like public transportation solutions, in all their various forms, are developed and planned independent of main car transportation infrastructure. Does that make sense? That they're saying, we're gonna put in this freeway here, and we're gonna connect this road here, and that kind of development planning is done separately And then public transportation as well, we'll figure out how to do it kind of ancillary to that. Does that make sense? And so that I sometimes feel like we are not getting a cohesive transportation plan. Where all of these various inputs and variables are all being considered together. You know, there seems to me there might be alternatives to large public infrastructure projects that could be the funds for those, the billions of dollars that are being allocated could be better allocated towards public transportation enhancements or expansions. And it just feels like we're having to pay for both when maybe there should be some discussions about some trade-offs and some options. Does that make sense? Yeah. Just that there's only so much money and taxpayers are feeling the burdens of lots of different things. I mean, just last night, the county proposed another, $500 million on Sully County taxpayers for new jail stuff, right? And it's not a lot in of itself, but it's another, $60 a month? For taxpayers, and that, if we start saying, oh, we need to raise taxes to get a bond, to do this, to do that, something's gotta give somewhere. And I was talking with, Representative, Owens about some potential things, and it was an interesting conversation where he had never considered that you could serve more than one benefit at a time. For example, he had never put together that you could actually use broadband infrastructure, is one of the things we've talked about, right? You could use broadband infrastructure to not only help with education, but it could also help with transportation at the same time. He actually serves on both boards, and he thought, why aren't we talking about how investing $1 billion or $2 billion into broadband infrastructure could save us $10 or $20 billion in highway infrastructure, because now we'd have a better system. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I know that's a little bit long-winded, but I'm just saying, what, it seems common sense to get all of those things together, because they're all complementary to each other, or they should be complementary to each other. Sometimes I think they're in conflict with each other.
Problem is, it's government.
Yeah, I know. I'm just,
Very each agency is very protective of their, I call it the sandbox
Yeah.
mentality.
We work on this, we can do better, it's a great point you're making, and we can do better, we are working on it. And I think having UDOT as a full partner in this can, perhaps within this particular sandbox, we can kind of, hopefully we'll do even better on it.
It really has been impressive to see all the parties come together for this.
I'm optimistic so far, like it's different than it's
So
been.
while we
up to
voice
this
our
point, so.
frustration, I'm hopeful that this effort leads somewhere, and while Sherry and I especially are frustrated with our, I guess, longer tenure dealing with some of these studies, every effort hopefully, like I said, inches us closer. Hopefully some of that experience will inform the next effort, right? And if we work from both ends, I think
Well, and
we've got a better chance.
to your point, most of the corridors left are gonna have to be shared corridors, really. I mean, I think to your point that everything is pretty much committed, there aren't a lot of new corridors to be found. And so a lot of the conversations we're having with UDOT is how do we share some of these corridors?
Why
Probably
in the
not all
world
of
you
them.
would not plan to have a rail line or
Right down
Mountain
the
View?
Right down the middle of Mountain View, yeah.
From the, like, right, why would you not plan for those things?
That's what
It's
was been talked
beyond
about
me.
at this consistently, this art type,
Right,
bar.
because see what happens is.
All of the right of way that's already there and ready and
I mean, they planned it, right? Nothing was there. You could have done it right from the
Because the
beginning.
problem is they could spend, $5 billion completing Mountain View corridor, and then come back 10 years later and spend another $3 billion tearing it up to put in new infrastructure to support public transportation. Instead of just looking at it ahead of time and saying, wow, if we would integrate these plans, we could probably
You guys
save
won't
some
like
money.
this, but I've said over and over, if UDOT was just part, or if UTA was just part of UDOT, right? Then that barrier between the sandbox goes away a little bit.
We actually have a great working relationship with them right now. And if there is state funding, they're actually the ones constructing it, if it's fixed rail or fixed guideway. And so a lot of that planning is actually being done now. And they've added a component to their work to do transit.
Well, we hope that fresh look will warp into fresh action.
Yeah, let's call it that.
We'd love to have you work with us to have this fulfill, you know, the promise of it.
Right.
So I think it's really gonna take a team to make this happen. So thank you very much, appreciate it.
Hope that salt that we're grinding in there doesn't hurt.
No, it's, you know what, I think the skepticism is warranted, so.
We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, thanks for coming out, you guys.
Thanks for coming, representing MAG, good job.
Yeah, for sure, it's good to be here.
Okay, we'll move to 2.2, ex officio board member appointments.
So with our South Valley Chamber membership, 2 membership positions on their board. I'd like to know if you'd like to fill those in our week meetings, or the last Wednesday of the month at 7:30
AM.
AM.
7:30
AM. You can do 2 council members, you could do a council member and city manager or designee, you could do whatever mix you want. There's a few cities that have city manager and the council member or mayor, and there are others that just have council.
Just the council.
So
And I will
it's up
say
to you.
that Wednesday mornings don't work for me right now for a year and a half until my daughter starts driving.
How's Wendy's schedule look?
You wanna do something.
It's an ex officio position on this board. Like I said, several cities have 2 elected officials, so it really is up to you also. This is your decision. They asked us who you want on there, and I said, I'm mine to decide. So I
So
don't-
ex officio, to correct me if I'm wrong, means it's not an official board seat where you're voting, but you're in the room and you're.
Well, it means by virtue of the office. Now whether, I don't know what their board bylaws have you voting, but every city gets, everybody who joins at that level is on the board. So yeah, we'd have to look to see.
Oh, yeah. So we're just wondering if anybody's interested, we can just put their name up there.
Well, I am down to just one, cause I don't have a water board assignment anymore, so we have the garbage board, so if you need a volunteer, I'll volunteer unless there's somebody that's chomping
Second.
at the bit.
Third.
Yeah.
And Teddy's not here, so he volunteered.
Teddy, are you interested?
Yeah, I think it would be a fun morning meeting. It's right after, I got the sewer board on Tuesday, then that wouldn't be the Wednesday, so
But
I can give it
unless
for the
there's,
2 mornings of the week.
unless you really want to.
Oh, no.
I tried.
No.
Wednesday mornings are good for me.
Okay, so head nods for Sherry and Teddy. Okay.
And so they'll send us the meeting and the information.
Yeah, we'll let them know.
And we'll add that to the,
Rotate the
the,
list every year.
yeah.
And back to Diamond Walk to one of my FA finance.
Okay, that was easy.
You know it.
Okay, 2.3, do we want to, thoughts on continuing? 2.3, do we wanna continue that then? Meet with, it's just Adam, right? Adam's just up.
So the issue is actually, you have a vacancy. How do you wanna fill it?
So what's tell me the difference between this item and the other. Is it the same thing and we're just discussing it in both meetings again?
Is there,
No, this was, sorry, what?
which other item?
The 2, 3, and 11.
No, those are
11.
two
Oh, they're
separate.
two separate, they're just
11-3 is good.
11-3. So I guess really the conversation is, how do you want to fill that slot? There's an opening on your planning commission. Somebody's term expired. I think traditionally in Harriman, we've just been automatically reappointing, but it really is a conversation with the council. How do you wanna do that? There are some statistics in here and how it's covered. You know, how that breakout is across the city. I have some concerns that you have District One, which is one of your fastest growing areas, that does not have a representative on the planning commission. That whole Olympia, there's nobody, now again, a lot of our decisions are done, but I just think that's one of the.
I thought we were off the agenda.
Well, the question is, do you wanna think about it and
So that's why there's not really a recommendation, cause it's really just
Yeah, it's your,
how we want.
how you want to run this thing.
yeah,
I'll give you my recommendation if you want.
Do it.
I love Adam. But you don't have any representation in District One, which is why I made that emphasis in the report. I italicized that, I gave you the information. It's not a flaw, but I see it as an opportunity. I would take one of our alternates and promote them as a regular, and then I would advertise for District One applicants only as an alternate. And I would probably recommend Tara as a regular member. She's currently working part-time for the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. She has been coming with lots of good questions. Preston Oberg is fantastic as well. He also served on our community facilitators committee for years, so he's very good. He's lived in 2 different neighborhoods in our city. I would love to see him as well. But that would be my recommendation if you want names.
And then bring an alternate in
But I didn't wanna
from District
do
One.
that with, the presumption, so.
Usually at this point, like, the telepathy, I can tell we're thinking the same thing, go ahead.
Well, I have an extra thought on there too. So one of the things we've talked about in the past is making planning commission appointments subject to kind of a report card. Like how have they performed during their time? Have they, followed the mandates that the planning commission has? Have their recommendation and comments been in harmony with the responsibilities that they have?
Oh, I said
Are
earlier,
they-
what kind of performance review?
Yeah, are they contributing well, that kind of thing. And kind of absent that, it's hard to know if we should reappoint somebody or
Yeah.
not, but that's just kind of conceptual. The second thing is though, taking somebody who's been there for 10 years and saying, we're not going to reappoint you simply because of your address is not, that's not necessarily a great reason for making a change at this point. Now, I could say that we could consider, making appointments to the planning commission, some of them based on districts. It's a 9-member board, you could have representation
One
from each district, and then you have at-large appointments, that kind of a thing. I'm okay discussing maybe how we appoint and where we appoint from, because, like you said, that paragraph talks about, the diverse interests and diverse representation across the city. And I think that's appropriate, sentiment for what we want there, right? But I'm just reluctant to take somebody with Adam's just, vast experience and knowledge and history in the city through some of the craziest growth times and annexations and all the other stuff that's been going on, and just take him off because of his address.
I believe.
I guess that would just be my comment.
And I had stated that in the report, I said, we value experience.
Yep.
And yeah, he absolutely has a ton of it.
When the institutional knowledge goes
Yeah,
down,
that's what I-
right?
Yeah,
So
that's
there's,
the
I
thing,
can't even count now how many times in these meetings, I'm like, now wait a second, I remember our discussion, that MBA, even in this discussion, I looked at Wendy earlier and said, pretty sure we've discussed this process before, having a regular review if they're right, doing it in closed and reviewing the performance and those sorts of things we've talked about, criteria and look at but some things have kind of been done and we've changed seats and some of it's kind of been lost, so maybe now's a good opportunity to go through that. I think working towards having, so if there's, remind me again how many full members versus
7
alternates?
and 3 alternates.
And
So-
Just to remember, I think there's two discussions. One is how we appoint, and one is do we reappoint Adam, right? Those are kind of
Yeah,
two
yeah.
separate questions.
Yeah, I'm going off on
Okay.
that. So one, I'll say, I kind of agree overall that I think Adam's done an excellent job. And the experience and the knowledge of it. And here's the other part with any of these positions. We say that we're glorified volunteers. These guys really are,
100%.
right? They
They
spend a lot of time.
lot more than we do.
Yeah, right?
They do too.
So it's hard to tell someone who's
Oh, and you're
willing,
right, so.
who's willing to put the time in, who has the knowledge, right? I'd say professionally and in this area, and say, now we're gonna say no and we wanna hang out a help wanted sign in District One, right? So I have a hard time doing that here. I kinda have, my gut response to all of that was Adam's good. I really wanna keep Adam for all those reasons, but going forward, what's the process and how do we recruit people? At least I think with 7, there needs to be at least one from each district, right? And then the others can be from anywhere, but it's hard to find. I think, at least when I first got involved in all of this, I don't wanna offend anyone, but in my opinion, the majority of that planning commission was not up to the task. And we finally have a collection of people who are willing to do it, who I think are.
With
They're
different
more than
backgrounds, with
Yeah, right, they're qualified, they're willing to spend the time, they're committed, they've done a good job, right? So the work you guys have done to implement those changes is fantastic. But I think maybe now is just an opportunity to make it a little more robust, let's formalize the process. And things going forward, I don't wanna throw the baby out with the bathwater. In this case, right, I would like, for this one, like keep Adam, but to your point, yeah, let's look at the process and see if we can implement things some changes going forward rather than just cutting our nose off and saying we wanna do that. We've got a good thing going, but we can make it better by implementing these things that will come into play.
And look, I think there's two aspects to that. One is there's gonna be some, city code language that would have to change, for the constitution of the planning commission, right, and how that's done. Maybe we'd have to amend their terms and, so that we're not doing it all at the same time and it's not an election year, there's definitely some
The
things to
minutiae
consider
that
about
comes
the
in, yeah.
process. But maybe staff could come back with some, a process recommendation of how we could transition into a representative membership and some at-large membership.
You're not codifying instead of just by practice trying to
Yeah,
do it.
absolutely.
'Cause you do it either way, right? You can do it formally. I will say that the challenge is, at some point, if you want representative in District One, somebody who's on there has to,
Somebody has to leave.
They have to leave.
I understand.
So that is just the challenge. That's why this needs to be a discussion for council, is how do you want us to cover? This has nothing to do with Commissioner Jacobs.
Well, if somebody has to
Just
leave,
about,
I would like a process for how we do that, not just have it default Adam, cause he's the first name that came up when we were discussing it, right? Does that make sense? I don't think that's necessarily fair to Adam, nor necessarily in the best interest of the city to make a decision like that.
Yeah.
Cause while sorry, go ahead.
I agree with what you've all said, except for I'm not as concerned about the districts myself, because their job is to make sure that things align with what our code is, what our rules and laws are, right? Their job isn't necessarily to say, well, I like this type of housing style and things like that. Their job is really to look at, does it comply with our
Compliance,
code?
yeah.
Isn't that what their job is?
And Adam probably lives closer to Olympia. I mean, if somebody were to, say from Copper Creek is in yours, Adam's gonna live closer to Olympia Hills than somebody in
Yeah, so
Copper
that's kind of what I was
Creek,
just gonna say, Sherry, is that I think that having one from each district, that's a great idea, but how do you recruit a qualified person, right? And how long does that take? I'm much more concerned about the quality
Yeah.
of the people that we have versus.
And the diversity of their backgrounds, I think, is more important than exactly where their address is. Because I think you've done a
I think
great
it's a
job
fair
of
point.
recruiting people from a lot of different backgrounds, so they come with different experience in different fields. I think that would be more beneficial than worrying about exactly what type of housing they live in.
So the one thing I'll say, just an experience in other communities, when you're, and it's not happening here, but where you see like all of them get appointed from,
One
say,
area.
one area.
Yeah.
And the rest of the community, their legitimacy as they're making some of those things gets called into question.
I can see that.
You don't represent us, the council's like, well, we do, but you're appointing only people here. And so that is just something you have to balance, it's a public policy. I mean, I think your point about the expertise would go against codifying, hey, we need somebody from each district. Because then you could end up with a more qualified, somebody who's got more skills in here, but they live in the wrong.
Maybe we don't
It's
codify
more of a policy that outlines the process, and that's one of the desirable, I put here, it's a
mix.
location is an important consideration. But I don't know that you can require, just in my experience trying to get people involved, right? Morgan, it's tough to get
honestly-
people to wanna spend the time to do it. How do we know you're gonna get somebody from that district, let alone somebody that's qualified? But
And honestly, I would much rather appointments or reappointments be made based off of a performance evaluation more than seniority. Like, this isn't a union, you know what I
Right.
mean? If you've been there a long time, but your performance is not as
You
good
never
as the
say
other ones are,
anything,
right?
it's
and
like,
that's why we've
Then-
talked
then
about
we would
doing that
replace that
performance
person.
review,
Yeah,
right? Because we've had some that want to legislate and that's not their job. Their
Right.
job is
so,
to make
so
sure
that's what
that
I would say is, and I appreciate you making that point, Sherry, cause I think that's a very valid consideration, is that I think reappointment should be based on performance. Initial appointment, that should be something that we consider when we're evaluating certain candidates. It may not be the biggest criteria, but if there's two equally appointed candidates and one is in an area that doesn't have a lot of representation, it might lean towards them in part of the decision making, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that location would be something that we would consider for new appointments,
that's where I was gonna say, that's,
Yeah.
So I say, build those things into the process so that as those vacancies happen, right?
Yeah.
cause there will be vacancies,
Sure.
right? I mean, there haven't
Yeah.
been any for a
Yeah.
little bit, but there will be.
Some get elected to be mayor, you know?
And I agree with Nathan, I think that should be established by policy. And if the council is comfortable, we could prepare a resolution for Adam's reappointment for consideration next time. And bring a policy to you for future administration, or we can bring them both back for.
And I'm
just work
okay with
session
both of
discussion.
those. However, I think that decision on reappointment should be accompanied by some
Yeah.
kind of a
Give you that
qualitative
attendance
analysis of
information,
his
yeah.
performance.
But I think that, I'm wrong, I don't like talking about people when they're not here or in the public sphere, I mean, that's kind of what closed is supposed to be.
I would agree, that's probably a reasonable time to have some.
I think it would be valuable in the policies to outline how you are judging performance.
Yeah.
Right, what are
So
you
it's not subjective.
What are the
judging
criteria?
them
Yeah.
against? Right, if you have a candidate or a commissioner who like misses more than half your meetings, that may be something,
Yeah.
that would seem like something you say, hey, we're gonna,
We talked about all those things, right?
Yeah, I know we did that, like attendance and,
I don't recall, so it may have, I mean, this may.
It
Might have
said-
been, like I said, it was in the
Yeah.
transition.
yeah, it might have been.
It's one of
I've
my
had this
first-
conversation before, just not with this council. So I think what I would recommend is, we can come forward on the reappointment, but let's draft a policy for your consideration that includes that process, so that your planning commissioners also know what they're supposed to be doing.
So Michael, even if you don't have the policy ready in 2 weeks, even if it's just a quick, but even if, right, that's what I'm saying, so, but he had said if he wants to come back.
If you,
But I'm just saying, if you just, maybe a quick report about Adam, I mean,
oh yeah,
with we know he attends all the time, but with that, so a resolution, but with just a quick.
Yeah.
Just so we know what he's done and then.
And you know, that's probably gonna be an iterative thing, but if there's at least an opportunity to give it, you know, a letter grade or a 1 to 5 number of, some reasonable criteria we should consider about, attendance could be one, are their decisions in harmony with, what they're supposed to be doing, do they go, off script, or are they, truly sticking to the evaluation of complying with code, or are they trying to, as Jared said, legislate from, the planning commission, that kind of stuff. And I'd probably have to think about it a little more on some more, kind of thing, but there's probably a couple objective and a lot more subjective analysis of that, so.
So I'm hearing, come back with, for Adam in 2 weeks, we don't need, in other words, like Jared said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's approve Adam now, and let's work towards a process for the next time.
Right, I have a vacancy or another term expiring for a little bit now.
So that's what I said, so we've got some time.
A couple of
We've got some
alternates at the end
time.
of the year.
Yep, so we've got some time.
We can come with the
Let's get
policy.
Adam through. I think we all agree that.
Look, I don't wanna put the cart before the horse with that. If you're
Do the
asking me, just in the absence of any information, Adam probably is
And that's
worthy
what I'm
of
saying.
reappointment, but I'd like to make sure that we have some kind of analysis on Adam before
And that's
we
what I'm saying, the
make that
resolution comes next week,
Okay,
but with
yeah.
that accompanying analysis.
Yeah.
So then we can say no to the resolution if that doesn't,
Or what are staff recommendations and
right?
Just for context, we have a great commission. I have really, really valued the fact that we have 3 alternates. I have never worked for a city who has had that structure. And then some of you recall when Heather approached the council and asked if the alternates could participate in discussion. That was a game changer for our commission. I can't remember the last time we had to cancel a meeting because of, we didn't have a quorum. Close a couple of times, but we haven't had to cancel for that reason. We don't have planning commission decisions that are getting appealed and overturned. We generally have very positive decorum and respect, so, any of the metrics we might identify, I would say confidently, our commission is meeting those. We have a great commission.
Yes, we do.
They're very invested and they want to help move the city forward, so.
good feedback.
Yep. Okay. So we good? You got direction,
enough.
you understand?
We'll do good with that.
Okay, 2.4, quick update from, I like when I put quick update from
There's not
public
much
meeting,
information, so.
altering the safe walk route for Silver Crest warrant study on here.
Yeah, so quick update. Do a little bit of background as you may all know, we are making a change to the safe walk route for Silver Crest Elementary for this next school year. We've worked with the school district and the school community council, and by we, that's engineering, and HPD's been a big part of that. So implementing that is coming up for the new school year. So to get the word out to inform and educate about the new change of moving the crosswalk across Main Street from Harriman Rose to Black Locust, or the signal right here, that's the change, right? And so it does require a little bit more walking for a lot of students than it did previously. But in our analysis, we felt that that was the safest way to get to school based on the existing infrastructure. So it was well attended. There were some spirited conversations, and not everyone agreed that that was the perfect solution, which we discussed. It's the safest solution, might not be the bulletproof, right? There's always concerns. And so based on that, some of the community members wanted to meet with us after the meeting. And there was kind of a 2-part discussion that happened in that meeting that is now ongoing, which is, for the most part, it seems like most people understand, given the current circumstances, it makes sense to have students cross at a traffic signal rather than an uncontrolled intersection. Generally, that was accepted. The next step was, well, if that's the case, this intersection's not safe, why aren't you giving us a traffic signal at that intersection? Why isn't that in the plans? So, based on that discussion, and as we met with some community members, or representatives of the community, they asked us to look at that intersection again for a traffic signal. So we are going to do some studies of the area, look at traffic counts to see if a signal warrants. But with that said, even if it warrants a signal, there are ongoing concerns on why we might not install a signal there. There's two issues. Sight distance is number one. As you know, there's curves on both sides of that intersection that limit your ability to see the intersection. The other concern is the proximity of that intersection to the existing signal. So we are gonna do a warrant study to see if the traffic and the volumes warrant a signal. And then with that, we would have to come back and say, okay, it warrants, but it's still not safe for this reason, or it is. We'd have to find solutions to those problems to move forward. And then it would go into our CIP, and then eventually the council would have an opportunity to adopt that as a project in the budget. But
And the warrants, we won't start until school starts.
Yes.
So we won't have any additional information until October-ish?
right, so we'll probably wait, as everyone knows, the first couple of weeks of school are not normal patterns, everything's a little bit chaotic. So we'll wait probably till September to get the traffic counters up, to get some counts on the pedestrians until after school's been in session a little bit. And then that process will take about a month before we have the analysis done, so that's where we're kind of shooting for October to have. And if the council would like, we could come back at that point in October and give an update. But that's the update for the community. We did say, hey, if you don't agree with the results or something, you can come in for public comment. So they may attend this meeting and next meeting to give some public comment. Not everyone agreed, like we said. We have Zach here from HPD that also was a big part of it. He can help answer some questions as well. But with that, I'll leave it to the council.
Seems too close to put
It's
another signal.
yeah, so
in the middle of
for
their-
context, we like to have a quarter mile in between signals. Now, the caveat is these two existing signals are closer than that. But making two wrongs doesn't make a right. Like, let's not put three too close together, right? And it's about 650, so that's half of the quarter mile distance that we would like to see between traffic
You're also
signals.
counting Brindisi Way at the same time, right?
Yes, and for more context, Brindisi in the last count, we counted both intersections in 2020, and Brindisi actually had more traffic than Harriman Rose did. Now, when you're living there, that might not seem the case, right? It's all about context and seeing the big picture, but the argument could be made at Brindisi as well. Again, one of those two concerns kind of goes away. The sight distance is a lot better at Brindisi. It's not perfect because you still got the curve coming off of 126, but it's a lot better. But the concern of the distance to this existing signal is still there. And so, yeah, I can answer any other questions.
And there's some frustration, one thing that got brought up was these residents, they were told, some of them were saying they were told a stoplight would be there rather than here. So they feel like,
Yeah,
That's
it was
even-
about 10 or 12 years ago that this was being discussed, and
That's even
But
too close to the,
yeah.
to the 5600,
I've looked at the
that's way
earlier
too
plans,
close.
there's never been a single plan at that location.
Yeah, and it's tough. Everybody wants everything to be perfect at their location, right?
Yeah.
They want it to be the most convenient, they want it to be the most safe, they want it to be what suits their interests best, and I get it. I don't blame people for pursuing their own self-interests. In our role as members of city council and engineering and stuff is to not have those biases in the decision making, right? It's to look at it from a comprehensive standpoint and say, based on a culmination of all of the facts and all of the information that's available here, and in the best interests of all of these competing interests, this is the solution we're choosing to implement, right? And so, I mean, we talked about this as like all different kinds of different engineering solutions and curbed entrances and, blocking off things at certain times a day. And I mean, we talked about all different kinds of things in traffic committee. None of them worked. Like nothing is effective or as efficient as just moving people down to the traffic light right here. And so while I sympathize and I understand, I mean, it's like the same thing we had to do over here, right? The only safe walking route was 3 miles or whatever it was. that's not the greatest, that's not the most convenient, that's not helpful, it's not efficient. But it's, of all the option, it is the safest one we can choose for the kids. And I just would also say that just because that's not a safe place for children to cross going to and from school, doesn't necessarily make the intersection unsafe for all pedestrian traffic or traffic in general. So,
And I mean, they have to walk a little bit further, but they're a whole lot safer, so.
way safer.
And there is nothing wrong with kids getting a few extra steps in a day. They go to school and sit, they get a little recess and sit, so it's okay to have a few extra feet to walk. What do you think, Zach? Were you good with the?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
It's
It's
better-
definitely the safest one.
the better solution, yeah.
It's something we've talked about, I don't know how many times, this has been so,
Yeah.
it was built just a little bit after we moved in, it's where all my kids went. And that crossing is talked about right away because of the sightlines, right, the bend in the road right there, it's just, that's what makes it dangerous for anybody to walk across there. And that's just always been the case, it's been a consistent safety hazard, so, but just having a signal helps, but that's always, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but that's been the underlying factor that makes that location unsafe.
That was the primary driving factor behind the fact that the light is at Black Locust and was never contemplated at that intersection was the sight distance, and that was back, we started talking about this 2012, probably when you first came in.
Yeah.
One of the very first issues we talked about, and that's why the light ended up at Black Locust.
Nothing's like that.
Katie, do you wanna say anything? This is yours. I know you've been dealing with this the most.
He was, I heard him in there.
Yeah, I heard the microphone. Teddy?
Yeah, sorry, I was talking away and on mute. I just want to say thanks to Blake and Bryce and Zach for taking a fresh look at this and having that meeting and helping answer those questions to those community members that live, my neighbors. And there are quite a few of them that aren't happy with this. Understand that it is a great safe walk route. The other issues is the non-school times, and just like you guys were saying, it's not that it doesn't mean that it's a not safe place to cross if you're paying attention and you're an adult or you can keep your eyes up, but from the sight distance and from the other factors. But having this study and looking at it, I think it's going to help out answer a lot of those questions that weren't answered 10, 12 years ago when they were asking. We might have that information, but it's more correct and true information now due to the new traffic patterns and the people living there. And it's not a computer algorithm from 10 years ago saying this might what it be, but I just appreciate that. And I know that the community members will too. So thank you, Bryce.
Okay, see what tonight brings. Okay. How long is closed?
I'm leaving.
After?
Probably. As much as I hate that, it's probably more than 15 minutes.
Okay. So I'll look for a motion to temporarily adjourn the work meeting.
We just need to adjourn,
Just
right?
adjourn it.
Just adjourn, yeah.
She used to have it, say temporarily.
Motion to adjourn the work meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No, it's been really good to have.